Now, not to toot my own horn, but for the past couple of years, I have actually been pretty good at predicting who the surprise cut for the Buffalo Bills would be. Last year was Mitch Morse. I do remember predicting that. A lot of people were like, oh, no, we can't walk away from our center. But sometimes the cap situation is just too good to pass up. And I think the Buffalo Bills have a couple of candidates, and shout out to my boy Dwayne for sending me over an article for the inspiration of this. And it was 5 players that the Buffalo Bills could potentially cut this offseason to save in overall cap space. We don't have the final number for what the NFL is going to have from a cap space situation. It's being predicted to be around $275 million, which in turn would have the Buffalo Bills at around $14 million over the cap. So we're going to have to make some moves to make some money. And obviously, we can do that with restructures, with extensions, if you will. But one name that popped up on this article just so happened to be Matt Milano. And I can tell you, it's funny, as a Bills fan who does this for a living, I am very in tune with the tonality of Bills Mafia, how they feel. And one thing I've always realized is that each and every single week, there is an enemy of Bills Mafia, right? Like there is a player that people do not want on this team based off of their performance. And surprisingly enough, Matt Milano had that title for a couple of weeks. He stepped up during the playoffs, but I think that we can all agree that he has had terrible luck with the injury bug. He is about 30 years old. And he has a contract in which that he was extended. He's technically under contract for another 2 or 3 years, but we are going to look at the possibility, of course, of us cutting him, how that would benefit the Buffalo Bills. Is it even possible? And we are going to come to that conclusion together. Now, please do me a favor, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you are watching the replay of this video, it's very important that you also hit that bell notification because I want you to be a part of my live chat community. I do all of these episodes completely live, and I want you guys to be able to have fun in the live chat and have pretty solid conversations with everybody. Giant shout out to William Mattar, law offices. If you are hurt in a car, you better call William Mattar, #1 car accident attorney in the state of New York. I will never wish this on my worst enemy, but in case you ever are in a car accident, you have to have the right representation, and you are looking at the best in the business, folks. William Mattar, shout out to him. Shout out to William Mattar Law Offices for sponsoring this channel for the Buffalo Bills. And Dan Mitchell, man, in 2025. Shout out William Mattar. All right. Matt Milano, guys, what do we need to do about our linebacker who was at one point a massive piece to this defense? And I also want to shed light on the fact that Matt Milano is very much still a solid player. I think that we ultimately ended up seeing that during the playoffs. I thought that he played well in all 3 playoff games. He was solid in coverage. He was solid as a spy for several matchups that we had, specifically against the Baltimore Ravens. He absolutely shined. So I don't think if we do retain Matt Milano, if he is not a surprise cut next year, which we are going to unpack on this episode, obviously, I think that we will be fine with his overall production. As long as he could avoid any sort of injury, he's not going to be out for a couple of weeks. I think that if he could play a full season, then obviously I think that he's still going to be able to play at a very, very high level. But we obviously need to have this conversation. So let's take a look at his contract and what that would mean. So, as we can see with Matt Milano, folks, he is indeed, let me go on ahead and fix this up real fast. He is under contract until the end of 2026. His base salary will be $9.2 million, signing bonus at 2.3, already restructured at 1.2, roster option bonus as well, workout bonus, ultimately putting our cap number here at $15.8 million. Now, it's nowhere near as bad as the JA-17 cap hit or some of our higher paid athletes on the roster. But as we know, we need to be able to finesse and finagle different ways to gain some money. So we could be players in free agency and, dare I say, make an absolutely insane damn trade. So what would this mean based off of Matt Milano potentially being gone? So as we can see, here are the four options and what that would mean for the Buffalo Bills. Number one, we have a pre-June 1st release. All right. And that would mean that we would lose money. All right. Minus $1.4 million in 2025. And then we would also lose money 2025 minus one. All right. So us like being able to release him pre-June 1st, us being able to trade him pre-June 1st is doing us zero favors. 2025 dead cap would be $17.2 million, less than ideal. But now we end up moving over into June 1st. If, for example, we were to post June 1st cut Matt Milano, this is what this would look like, right? We ultimately would save $9.6 million immediately in 2025. And same thing with a post June 1st release and or trade. And dead cap would only be at around $11 million. Now, one thing I always love pointing out about this post June 1st sort of like situation, right? Post June 1st is good if like you're just trying to build up your cap in general. But if we're trying to utilize that $9.6 million in free agency, or if we're trying to have it immediately so we could really structure a trade when the free agency market is hot or when the trade market is hot, ladies and gents, this is almost useless because that $9.6 million that we would be saving wouldn't even be able to be used until after June 1st. So if we were to put a post June 1st cut on Matt Milano, we wouldn't be able to use this money in the first place. And I think half of the reason why we want to do all of this finessing with our salary cap and contracts currently existing on this Buffalo Bills squad is because we obviously want to use that money, right? Like we want to be able to go out and sign some pretty needy free agents. Like we want to be able to be in the running for the Max Crosbys, for the Myles Garretts of the world, so that we can create these contracts. So it's kind of redundant, right? Like what's the point of designating him as a post June 1st cut and or trade if we're not going to be able to see the money until June 1st in the first place? Now, don't get me wrong. There could be a free agent that's still around after June 1st, or there could be a player that we could make a trade for after June 1st. But is that really something that I think this team is going to roll the dice on, especially with how good Matt Milano is playing during the playoff performances by itself? So when I look at it here in 2025, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. I'm going to go on ahead and I'm going to say that I think Matt Milano will be a Buffalo Bill again next year. I don't see him being a surprise cut. Does not really make sense to me financially. But let's see what that looks like next year in 2026, because the Bills technically have a potential out the following year. And let's check out those numbers, right? If, for example, that the Buffalo Bills wanted to walk away from Matt Milano in the following offseason, these are where those numbers would be. Right over here, guys. These is where those numbers would be. $5 million in cap savings in 2026. Post June 1st, we'd be able to save about $9.9 million. So next year would make a hell of a lot more sense as far as a quote unquote surprise cut. Now, again, I was very impressed with how Matt Milano played during the playoffs. I was not one of the ones that was complaining, being like, oh my God, Matt Milano, he's washed up. Like, we need to get him off this team. Like, he's like not the same guy anymore. I wasn't the one that was necessarily freaking out about that, largely because I knew that it was going to take some time for him to ramp up, right? And I think that he ramped up exceptionally, especially when it came into playoff time. So, moral of the story, I do not believe that Matt Milano should be a surprise cut this year because, number one, it makes zero financial sense. It does not help us out at all to go toward our goals whatsoever. That's where I'm at. Matt Milano, you are going to continue to be a Buffalo Bill in 2025. Now, folks, do me a favor. Smash that like button immediately. We want to be over 100 likes even after all of the replays. As you know, I post 2 videos a day or 2 live streams a day, one at 11 a.m. EST and one at 5:15 p.m. EST. And turn on those bell notifications so you never miss an episode. Anyway, let's go ahead and get to the chat and see what everybody has to say. We have Cameron coming on in saying, "What is up, Dan? Go Bills." How you doing, man? Ryan Volcom comes in, says, "No, we've already seen when he is healthy, he is absolutely elite." Yeah. I mean, listen, I feel like a lot of people were doubting Matt Milano last year. I think that they were anticipating that he would ramp up almost immediately, right? But he was about fully damn ramped up during the playoffs, and I think that that's a really good sign. All we need to do is just cross our fingers and hope and pray that he can put together a full 17-game season in 2025. Wouldn't that be ideal? Let's see. Guys, go help Tom Grossi out. He is helping children of fallen patriots. He will not stop live streaming until he raises $1 million. If you were able to donate, please help. Guys, yeah, go on ahead. Go on over to Tom Grossi's stream and make the donations. Can we please stop drafting small linebackers 6 foot under? So Bernard, Milano, Spector are all made of glass. We need 6'3" and higher linebackers like Josh Sweat. So Sweat's like a 3-4 linebacker, right? Like he's an edge rusher. So he's like not even necessarily that. If you want a big linebacker, then like you're talking about completely switching up our overall defensive identity, which is typically base 4-3 and also the nickel, right? Like we have 4 defensive linemen. That's just what we are. And it's kind of hard for me to come out and say, oh, yeah, like I don't like Bernard. I don't like Milano. Like that's a deadly linebacker duo. And hopefully this year we actually get to see a full season with them together. I really don't care much about size when it comes into the linebacker position because what's important to me is coverage. Can't release Milano. We see how important he is to the defense. Can see Bills running more 3 linebacker sets with him, Bernard and Williams. So the thing is, Todd, is that I'm fine with 4-3, right? Like I have been wanting to see that for quite a bit as well. But when you run 4-3, then that means you're taking Taron Johnson off of the field, and he's one of our best defensive players. So that's why I think the Bills are kind of married to that formation of nickel, because you don't want to take one of your best players off of the field, and that just so happens to be Taron Johnson. It's time to draft Chris Paul Jr. from Ole Miss in the 2nd round because they're probably not going to extend Bernard, and Milano's future is in jeopardy. Don't worry about that, man. We're going to be having a great conversation about that a little later. Dano, I like Matt Milano. He's a beast when he is healthy. Well, have no fear, man. I would be shocked, like color me shocked, if Matt Milano is ultimately ended up released this year. It does not make financial sense. Like, why would we post June 1st cut Matt Milano when we wouldn't even be able to use the cap savings until after June 1st when free agency is already dried up? It just doesn't make sense. Matt Milano is likely going to be safe on this roster. Quentin is coming in saying, this is the deepest D-line draft in years. Eagles built their line through the draft. We need 3 to 4 bodies on the damn line. Well, I'm going to tell you what, Quentin, listen, man, stick around because we're going to be looking at a lot of the prospects that I saw in person at the Senior Bowl, and then also all of the other draft prospects coming through. Combine starts in a little bit, and have no fear, we're going to be live reacting to quite a bit of Combine content on this channel. So subscribe if you haven't already. Brent, what's going on, man? Would hate to see Milano go. We let go of Edmonds. Hope our defense does not get worse. I really don't think that we're going to be in a position to get worse, right? Like, yes, we ultimately ended up like leading the league in turnover differential, which was our saving grace. And in my opinion, was perfume on a pile of shit, right? Or lipstick on a pig, because 3rd down was absolutely atrocious. The good thing is that this draft class is very deep in defensive line, as our good friend Quentin just pointed out. And also, I think that this is going to be a mission for Brandon Beane this offseason to bring in a game wrecker. I think that our defense is just missing one piece, and that one piece is somebody that consistently gets to the quarterback. A Max Crosby, a Myles Garrett. He's the sort of player that unlocks Ed Oliver. He is the sort of player that also unlocks Gregory Rousseau. And then also our one-tech defensive tackle can say about it. I really hope it's Walter Nolan. I mean, we'll see if he falls to us that late, or whether or not that we still have a 1st-round pick, depending, of course, what Brandon Beane wants to do. However, yeah, most definitely. As far as all the players that are due for an extension, they are all still technically on our roster, which is ideal. So, I see an improvement from this defense. I really do. Bernard and Milano doesn't get the Bills over the hump. Get rid of them. The W is coming. It wouldn't make sense, man, because like we would lose money getting rid of Matt Milano. Like, we would put ourselves in a way worse financial situation than we are already. And Bernard's still on a rookie contract. Like, there is absolutely zero reason to go ahead and get rid of him either. He is tremendous in coverage. And I'll tell you what, he's way better than Terrell Edmonds. He's way better than Tremaine Edmonds. He was a godsend from this guy. Um, Honestly, I think our linebacker duo was insane, and our secondary was incredible. A we were turnover merchants last year, excuse me. Like, we took the ball away, and that was our identity. That is not a linebacker issue, and that is not a secondary issue. Why we struggled was exclusively defensive line. So I'm not going to hop on the train where I think that we need to get rid of both, so Milano and Bernard. I just don't really see the benefit. So between either of that, I want to keep him. I just can't deal with him being out for a long time. Again, we have Gabriel, and we're talking a little Matt Milano action over here, right? Well, like I said, it doesn't make sense to us, guys. There are going to be some surprise cuts. I do think that there will be a player or two that we walk away from this offseason where we're like, holy shit. But when I look at these numbers, like, we are not going to like walk away from Matt Milano, right? Like, we cut him pre-June 1st, we lose $1.5 million. We trade him pre-June 1st, we lose $1.5 million. And even if we were to do it after June 1st, like, yeah, like, we get $9.6 million. But what the hell are we going to do with $9.6 million after June 1st when all of the good free agents are already gone? Like, what exactly would we do here? So have no fear. He's here for at least one more season. It's time for a scheme change. 4 years of losing to the Kansas City Chiefs, 1 year of getting blown out by the Bengals show the scheme doesn't work in the playoffs, especially to scary teams like the Eagles and the Lions. Well, first off, we beat the Lions. And they scored all their points in garbage time. I don't care what anybody says. Like, that was an absolute ass whooping, and I think our defense did pretty well. And if you ultimately end up looking at all of our playoff losses, guys, every single time that we have lost in the playoffs, we went into the season leading in multiple defensive categories. And the reason behind it is because we had multiple injuries on the defensive side of the football. I feel like that's something that a lot of us don't acknowledge, is just pull up every single playoff loss that we had in the past couple of years and list off some of the players that we were missing. I'm talking integral pieces. If we want to say that we need to address our depth, then I will allow that 110%. We certainly do. But it's not a scheme issue, man. Even as much as the Bills defense pissed a lot of us off this year, like, we were still top 10 in points allowed, right? Like, still top 10 in points allowed. A lot of that had to do with turnover differential. But no, I'm not going to go ahead and change up our scheme. Our scheme is fine. It's just health and depth is an issue. Health and depth is the biggest issue that I could see. Trade Milano and Groot for Garrett. I don't trust Beane's draft decision. Senke Chandler is coming on in. So here's the deal. I have to ask you, why don't you trust Beane's draft decisions, right? Because I could really only name two players that I think you guys are really thinking about that came into the first round. And number one is Kyer Elam. And don't be so mad about Kyer Elam, because everyone that says, oh, yeah, like, we could have traded up for Trent McDuffie. Well, guess what? We got Christian Benford in the 6th round, which is a Brandon Beane pick. And he is right next to Trent McDuffie in PFF score. He is better than Trent McDuffie in separation DVOA. He is right with him, top 5, top 10 in all cornerback metrics across the league. So if Kyer Elam is the reason why you don't trust Beane, I get it. If, say, it's Dalton Kincaid, for example, say that it's Dalton Kincaid, right? Like, oh my God, it's Dalton Kincaid. He was supposed to be some game-changing tight end. Why didn't he end up panning out for us? I mean, honestly, when it plays into it, like this back half of the season, so he was playing with a torn PCL, as we know. He ended up getting that injury. I want to say it was during the Lions game when it happened. And then with Josh Allen, although that he is our MVP quarterback, he is the MVP of the league, he could not hit Kincaid to save his life. Like, he was the number one weapon in the Buffalo Bills offensive pass attack that had the least amount of catchable balls. So I'm not selling out on Dalton Kincaid. I'm not giving up on him. Am I disappointed a tad? Do I wish that he would have been more productive? Absolutely. But there is context when it comes into it. Look, first round picks are interesting, right? Because 9 times out of 10, when you look at like draft classes, there's normally not 32 first round grade prospects in the NFL draft. There is not. There is not. There is very rarely, like when you look at all prospects across the board, where like you could say, all right, I'm putting a first round grade on this guy. This Buffalo Bills team has been drafting like 25 and further down. Guys, like 9 times out of 10, like just because a player is drafted in the first round does not mean that he is a first round talent. And the Buffalo Bills aren't really in a position where like you can like go and like get like a 10 or 11 or a 12. How I judge a GM based off of draft picks is what he does in the middle rounds, what he does in the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. And think of all the key players that he was able to draft in those mid rounds and some of the key pieces that we have on this team because of it, right? I could rattle off 6 or 7, and all of them are stars on this team, right? Like you have Benford, who, again, like I said, is probably one of the best corners in the NFL, 6th round. Had Taron Johnson, what was he, 3rd or 4th? Have Terrell Bernard, what was he, a 3rd round? Matt Milano, what was he, 4th, 5th round? I'm trying to think really what else is happening here. So many other players. Like, same thing with James Cook, right? Like he was a 2nd round pick. Shakir, the whole 9. So I am not going to hold it against Sean McDermott for missing on Kyer Elam and maybe missing on Dalton Kincaid, which I think is completely wrong. Every single GM is going to have a miss. It happens. You pull any NFL team on the face of the planet, their GM is going to have a miss somewhere, right? For the Kansas City Chiefs, I'd probably go with Jawan Taylor, right? Look at that. Dan, let's get Garrett and everybody else can stay. We get Miles Mahomes shirts in his pants. Steven's coming in. Bills defensive line just needs a pass rusher. Myles Garrett or Max Crosby, Joey Bosa or Trey Hendrickson. I'm good on Joey Bosa. I am good on Joey Bosa. He has a significant injury history. Trey Hendrickson, I would be interested. He's 30 years old, though. Myles Garrett is about to be 30 years old. I think my favorite is Max Crosby. I feel like my favorite is Max Crosby based off of production and based off of age and based off of we give a guy a 3 to 4 year contract. I know that we are getting him in his prime for the next 3 to 4 years. That would be ideal for me. Garrett, yeah, most definitely. I think in 2025, he's going to go out there and put up 15, 16 sacks. But in 2026 and 2027, that's an entirely different conversation. So I'm curious to see how that pans out. However, we will see. Dan, who is the defensive line coach? And if you say a scheme change is not needed, what is your recommendation for the defensive line? So this is what I'm thinking from a schematic standpoint. I like Ed Oliver as our 3 tech. I really, really do. But what I've said before about Ed Oliver is he's not the kind of player that elevates a defensive line. He's not, right? He's the type of player that benefits from having talent surrounding him. So I think if you add a pass rusher like Max Crosby, like Myles Garrett, like Trey Hendrickson, like somebody that's a true game wrecker, somebody that an offensive lineman is going to shit their pants when they line up against him, that is going to allow Ed Oliver to succeed. I also think that we need a new 1-tech defensive tackle. I think that Daquan Jones will be a cap casualty this offseason. It does not make sense for us to keep him. I think that we need to revisit the draft. Dare I say, go out and get a free agent like DJ Jones from the Denver Broncos, who has been a tremendous defensive tackle. He's also somebody to look out for. I think it's just personnel. It's not even necessarily coaching because we're getting pressure, right? Like we're getting pressure. But where we hurt is stopping the run. And stopping the run largely starts with that 1-tech defensive tackle position. So we really need to hit on an interior defensive tackle right within this draft or find somebody that could potentially get it done, right? And then lastly, we're just missing a personnel, a actual player on the defensive line that can finish the job. I'm not talking pressures. I'm talking putting quarterback ass to grass. That is what we are looking for. Frank is coming in. Roseman, GM for Philadelphia, is the real deal. Beane is cheap. Well, Roseman actually had several years of shit drafts, by the way. So several years of shit drafts. I just want to say that recency bias is a massive thing. Like Howie Roseman was public enemy number one for Philadelphia for his first couple of years over in Philly. It's true. It's hands down. He was missing left and right, and he just recently started to succeed. I would probably put Brandon Beane on top. I'd probably put Brandon Beane top 3 GMs in the NFL as far as consistency, as far as being able to field a team, right? Like we're talking about a Buffalo Bills team right here that has the highest win percentage, second to the Kansas City Chiefs for the past 5 years. Like we're 5 straight winners of the AFC East, like multiple AFC championship appearances, haven't lost a wild card game. And we did all of that with a roster that the entire national media coined us as a team that would be lucky to win 8 to 9 games and not even win the AFC East. So I really don't understand this whole Brandon Beane hate. And oh my God, Beane can draft. It just doesn't make sense. I feel like it's it's emotional, right? And that's not a bad thing. Like we all have the right to have our own opinion here, but that's me. Bills need to draft or sign an undrafted free agent, Sean Dolock, linebacker out of Buffalo. He is a gem. I'm looking forward to unpacking some of this tape, man. Hi, Dan. Don't have time working. Just stop by to give respect to you and all the cool Bills fans. Have a great afternoon, everyone. King Jamie the Madman. Have a great day at work, my friend. And we love you over here, man. We really do. We're getting over the hump if we get the DL in place. I agree with you. Myles Garrett, I would pass on Crosby. Interesting. Why would you pass on Max Crosby? John, I think they might cut Matt to re-sign Bernard, Benford, and Cook, stretching dollars. So here's the deal, John. I'm assuming that you may have just joined in, but when it comes into Matt Milano, it just doesn't make sense, right? It doesn't make sense for us to do that. Because say that we cut him pre-June 1st, then we lose $1.5 million and $17 million in dead cap. And say, for example, that we post-June 1st cut him, like we're not getting those savings until after June 1st, right? So I don't think it makes sense. And I think that we can make a lot of moves based off of restructures and also based off of cuts elsewhere. I still think that there's going to be a surprise cut this year, but I'm talking myself out of Matt Milano. It just doesn't make financial trade for TJ Watt. Yeah, I don't think he's going anywhere, bro. Derek Harmon from Oregon or Kenneth Grant from Michigan for defensive line. Those are really good players that I think are going to be well into the first round, that I don't think that we are a bad enough team to be able to draft a person like that. Myles Garrett would be awesome. I agree. A nose tackle is the obvious problem, in my honest opinion. If they had more pressure on the inside, then the edges, guys are freed up to do the work that they need to do. And it's interesting, right? Like, listen, I am a Brandon Beane defender, so which is pretty clear at this point, right? But one criticism I have for Brandon Beane is that he doesn't like a true nose tackle. He doesn't like the embodiment of an actual nose tackle. Like he doesn't like guys like Tavondre Sweat, who I know a lot of us wanted last year, right during the draft. He just doesn't like those huge defensive tackles that are like 6'3", 6'4", fridges, 300, that are going to be drawing doubles, that are run stuffers right down the middle. He just doesn't like them for some reason, which really doesn't make a lot of sense to me. He likes both defensive tackles, or maybe it's Sean McDermott, right? For athleticism exclusively. What do you think of drafting Kyle Kennard out of South Carolina as an edge who won the SEC Defensive Player of the Year? So I'll be completely honest with you. I have a couple of players way above him. I love Shamar Stewart out of Texas A&M. He looked really good during the Senior Bowl. I also like Princely Uman Milan. That's it. I'm working on the pronunciation there. Love him out of Ole Miss. And then I like Mike Green out of Marshall as well. I'm not sure if he's going to fall to 30. I'm not even sure if Buffalo is going to have a first round pick this year, if we ultimately end up doing what I hope that we do. But something to consider. Let me see. Frank is coming in. It's 4 guys. We can choose from Myles Garrett or Joey Bosa, Max Crosby, or Trey Hendrickson. And then you have Josh Sweat out of Philadelphia. He only had like 8.5 sacks last year. And the Buffalo Bills haven't had a pass rusher exceed 10 plus since 2013. I'm good on Josh Sweat. Dan, Are we keeping Amari Cooper or not? Keep reading different things and can't figure it out. Bills chick. Well, let me tell you what. I actually did a video on that the other day. I highly recommend you go on ahead and you check that out once this is all said and done. But spoiler alert, no, I do not think that we are keeping Amari Cooper. I think that he is gone. Cooper wants too much. We can go after Hollywood Brown. I agree. Jay is saying, I hope the Giants make Dexter Lawrence available for a trade. He'd instantly be a huge game changer for the defensive line for the Buffalo Bills. I mean, look, I'm going to go ahead and check this out, but I'm not even sure if that would be damn possible. Hold up. Like, yes, it's cool. Like, yes, we could potentially do it like on Madden, but here, let me go ahead and check out where he's at. Yeah, bro. He's under contract until 2027, and the Giants have a potential out in 2026. And say, for example, that they were to trade him. I mean, they could. 2025 savings, a pre-June 1st or a trade would only save them about like $2 million or $21 million dead cap. That doesn't make a lot of sense. Post June 1st trade, he could have like 16 million savings for New York, but they would have $7.1 million dead cap and $14.2 million dead cap in 2026. I think the Giants would be stupid financially if that was something that they would entertain. And there's no question to know how much that would cost him. Giants stink. I'm just letting you know it's freezing in Buffalo. Damn. Why would you need to trade for Dexter Lawrence? Just draft one. DTs are available in this draft. Dan, if Garrett comes in, do you think we get over the line and drop Kansas? I mean, listen, what Kansas City is struggling financially themselves. They currently have 6 players that account for about 63% of their cap. And they have a lot of free agents that will be leaving. And they also have a couple of players like Trent McDuffie and George Karlaftis that are likely going to be due a contract extension this year. Yes. And to be completely honest with you, based off of where the Kansas City Chiefs are right now financially, I'd feel pretty confident about us running it back with the exact same roster this year, and I think we'd be able to take care of them, in my opinion. How much for Kupp, and do you think running back James Cook will settle for less than $15 million? I mean, he's not Derrick Henry or Barkley, which are $8 million and $12 million running back, free agent, go after Browns running backs. How much for Kupp? I'm good on Cooper Kupp. He's 32 years old, and he can't stay healthy. Shane is saying, come on in. What date can any of these transactions take place? And the anticipation is killing me. All of this can technically start on the new league year on March 12th. Like, you could technically re-sign somebody now, right? I think teams have the ability to re-sign pending free agents now, because we just saw that the Carolina Panthers signed Andy Dalton to a 2-year deal to bring him back to Carolina. And then that's basically all it is. That is basically, Dexy is saying the thing about everyone saying just draft a defensive tackle is I think defensive tackles are going to fly off the board quick. Look at that. Give us your first round pick and Greg Rousseau, and we will give you Micah Parsons and a 6th round pick, first round pick for Rousseau. I'm good on Micah Parsons. I don't believe that would be crazy. So I've had Tom Grossi on my channel before. He did a mock draft with me last offseason. I'll probably end up having him on again. I already made a donation. So, and your boy's busy. I'm hungry. Beane is going to play it safe with the picks and settle like Josh will be in his prime forever. Bill's chick Rousseau is toast. Milky, hey, Dan, it's Milky. Milky, what's going on? How many names have you had? That is my question. Buffalo finally has a chat sports finally. Oh, competition? Doesn't matter. I'm going to bury those fools. How happy would you be if we make it to the Super Bowl without making it through the Chiefs in the playoffs? How happy would you be if we make it to the Super Bowl without making it through the Chiefs in the playoffs? I mean, listen, as long as we can go on ahead, and just make it to the Super Bowl, I could care less who we have to go through.
We have a good defensive line. It's just inconsistent. And we had games where our defensive line was dominant, but games where they didn't exist. Like to get a bigger body next to Oliver and a consistent pass rush. Let's get it going. All right, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in to another edition of Dom Mafia Live. I do want to remind everybody that I am live twice a day at 11 a.m. EST, 5:15 p.m. EST. I can imagine several of you are watching the replay of this video. Do me a favor, subscribe and turn on bell notifications because I really want you guys to be a part of my live chat community. It's a great community we have built over here. We have a lot of open conversations about the Bills, also about the NFL. So do that. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you tomorrow at 11 a.m. EST. Deuces.